For joining us now live via Skype from Cairo is VOA's Elizabeth Arrett. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, we know the position of President Bashar al-Assad, that he does not want this attack to happen. This point he's making about a regional war, can you expound on that?
Well, I think it's probably normal to expect some kind of reactive threat to the possibility of a strike on one's nation. It's not exactly clear what they mean, what he means, whether it would be attacking U.S. interests in the region, or as we saw today, we saw the U.S.-Israeli joint testing of a missile over the Mediterranean, maybe an attack on Israel. They haven't been specific, but they certainly have talked about the possibility, and there are many, many potential targets. Turkey, who has supported them, as we've just heard. So it's difficult to know, but certainly it's not unexpected there would be this kind of counter talk.
Obviously. Well, I know over here in the United States, the discussion is taking place about, getting congressional support to back Mr. Obama's plan. Now, what we just also heard in the tape that ran recently, Senator John McCain saying that they're fighting an unfair war right now because the Free Syrian Army does not have the equipment that the government does, that Russia and Iran, among others, are supplying it. How much evidence is there to support that?
Well, Senator McCain's been a huge backer of the rebels for quite a long time. President Obama has tried very hard to sort of stay back from all of this up until this point. They've given sort of non-lethal aid. There is some training and some covert aid that's considered probably slightly more aggressive than that. But for a lot of the talk coming out of the White House and various officials have been, this is not an action aimed at toppling the Assad government. This is supposed to be punitive action for the alleged use of chemical weapons. Mm-hmm. I think Washington's still quite wary about who all is in the opposition, and that perhaps the jihadist elements could come to the top and create more difficulty if Mr. Assad left. So they're trying to limit it just to the chemical weapons issue and not a change in the balance of power.
What do you know about the verification of whether or not chemical weapons were used in this particular case? Because the inspectors were just there. They haven't really come up with any definitive response to that, have they?
No, they still have at least another week, possibly up to 2 weeks, to analyze the evidence they had. It's not surprising, but Syria and its supporters say that it wasn't the Syrian government, and people who are trying to criticize the Assad government says it was chemical weapons used by Mr. Assad. Of course, we don't even have definitive proof that it was chemical weapons yet, and we're waiting for that. But the sides have lined up either for or against in terms of blame.
And very briefly, obviously, on the ground, Elizabeth, the massive, massive refugee crisis, 2.2 million plus as a result?
Yes. Yeah, the UN came out with that figure today. They called it the great tragedy of this century, disgraceful humanitarian crisis. I mean, the speed of how things are going badly. It took 2 years to get 1 million refugees and just 6 months now to get another million. Never mind the
100,000 plus who are known to have died as a result. Thank you so much, yes. Elizabeth Arrett, who's reporting for us live from Cairo via Skype. Now, as the crisis in Syria deepens, Russia has stood out as the strongest ally of President Bashar al-Assad. Exactly where is Russia on the issue? James Brooke reports for us from Moscow.
The whole world focused this week on Syria, where UN inspectors studied the aftermath of what opposition forces called a gas attack that killed 350 civilians and wounded thousands more. U.S. Navy ships moved into position, reportedly preparing a punishing air attack if it seemed clear that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad had gassed his own people. Where was Russian President Vladimir Putin, chief ally and arms supplier to the Syrian government? 6,000 kilometers east of Moscow, touring flooded farms in Siberia. He left it to his aides to launch verbal attacks on Washington. Here is Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
NATO may intervene to eliminate chemical weapons in Syria without UN Security Council approval. This is a very dangerous and slippery path. Our Western partners already stepped on it several times. I hope that common sense will prevail in the end.
Russia's state TV and think tanks constantly cast doubt on the gas attack. Vitaly Naumkin teaches world politics at Moscow State University.
Why is there such certainty that this was done by the regime, while the arguments we're hearing are anyway not convincing? It's incomprehensible. Why can't we wait for the inspectors to finish their work?
One voice rarely heard on Russia's state-controlled media is that of Mahmoud al-Hamza. He is a Russian-speaking, Moscow-based member of the Syrian National Council, the opposition umbrella group.
In the years since President Obama said that using chemical weapons crosses the red line, Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons and gas 13 times. This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last.
Despite the Kremlin's anger over apparent American and French plans to attack Syrian government military facilities, Russian officials recognize there is little they can do about it. Lavrov speaking from past experience.
You may draw conclusions based on our positions over recent years, when international law was grossly violated in Yugoslavia, Iraq, and Libya. This is bad, but we are not going to fight anybody.
The most Russia may do is snub President Obama when he comes to St. Petersburg for the G20 summit next week. On Friday, a Kremlin aide said that President Putin will be too busy to do more than shake hands with a visiting American president. James Brooke, VOA News, Moscow.